What is not being said about Thaco the Clown? I want to talk about Thaco the Clown because, and first I want to give some context about who I am as a gamer and what my views are on like debates between old school and new school. And then I want to give my opinion on Thaco. And if I may, and of course the internet is a big place, it's very possible that someone's going to say that what I'll say is stuff that someone already said. But I do think so far from what I have seen so far, I think I have a point of view to bring to to people who that I haven't seen really mentioned elsewhere a lot. Maybe in Twitter comments, but I don't think I've seen someone make a video about it. I've seen people be all like, "F yeah," and people be like, "I'm offended by Thaco the Clown," but as old school gamers, they're offended. But I want to talk about something. Yeah. So first of all, who am I as a player myself? I consider myself to be very progressive. I am not someone to call woke and stuff at all. Like for example, like I'm 100% on board with comic books featuring more diverse characters. I'm not gonna call woke on those things. I do think there are stories that are better written than others, of course. Like any subject matter, you can write it well or write it badly, and I will approach these stories as such. So I will look at how the material was handled, but overall, I do encourage diversity in our games, in our pop culture, and all those things. I'm not butthurt by race swapping in stories unless they would completely go against the concept of a character. So, for example, I'm one of those people who think that Idris Elba would make an excellent James Bond. So, like, I'm on board for that. However, like, Batman, I feel because of his background and all that, should at the very least be mixed because of the Wayne family history and the real history of America. Like, then, in the case of some characters, like, these are important factors to consider. And if you change them, I'm not saying you can't, but you have to keep in mind, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so all that to say that, I never use the word woke. I don't like it. I'm very progressive. I like to see diversity. I just want to see also good stories told, like. So, however, where I'm more old school, where I do look down on people, if you will, like, because where I have my opinions is, I think 5e is too soft. It's like, Ravenloft is the new version of Ravenloft to me is a useless book. It's like a horror game that tells you that people should not feel uncomfortable playing horror. Then it's not horror. Like when you go see a horror movie, you should not be feeling comfortable. Now, of course, when you say that, a lot of people want to paint you as some edgelord who's trying to traumatize your players. That's not what I'm talking about, and I'm not going to get into this in this video. So, I do fall into the old school. The way I like to play my games is a bit more old school than what is present, like new school. It's kind of funny because I started during 3rd edition, so I don't know when we're suddenly like, and then I discovered the OSR, and I kind of like with Castles and Crusades, they don't characterize themselves as OSR, but I would argue they're the first game who could be categorized OSR, other than maybe Osric. I think I have to look into it, but whatever. When I started playing Castles and Crusades, it was kind of a revelation that all the crunch and all the preparation I needed for technical stuff on 3rd edition, I kind of realized after a while, like at first I resisted the lack of character customization and all that, before realizing that Castles and Crusades actually allows for very much simpler character customization. I just didn't see it at the time because my brain was too wired on feats and stuff like that, and I still love 3rd edition, but to me playing earlier rule sets was kind of a revelation, right? Okay, so my reasons for liking old school gaming are simpler rule sets where prep time is devoted to the story and statting characters doesn't take forever, and combats to me are just a perfect length with something like Castles and Crusades. Not as quick as BX or Zero Edition, but like no, they don't take forever like the third edition and up games and such. So well, okay. So I do like the rule set. Also, I'm a bit more hardcore in the game style. Like if we're doing a horror game, I will be trying to scare you as a player. If we're doing like a traditional dungeon run and all that, like there's gonna be traps that can kill you if you're not careful. I like that magic users have D4 and don't have unlimited spells, even the level ones, stuff like that. Okay, so this is where I'm coming from. So that's one thing. Also, I do like my games to have an internal logic, which these days, without getting into other stuff, these days like there's almost like a mentality that all internal logic should be cast aside to create this bubblegum happy world, and that's seen as being more inclusive, which I don't agree with. And my game in my real life game has always had like I've always been super inclusive in my games. I have people from all backgrounds, but you know, like in my games, if someone loses a foot in battle, it's gonna affect them in a negative way. It's just the inside logic of the world, and you can do what you want with that, but you don't have to do what I do. I'm just saying what I do. To me, as far as stuff like, again, I just want people to know where I'm coming from, and then you can judge what I have to say according to that, because we all have biases, and if you don't know my biases, these are my biases. To me, stuff like safety tools. I do think communication is important before you start a campaign. If it might be a bit darker, it's very important people communicate these things. It's very important that people talk about it. However, I don't believe in stuff like the X card, because to me, what goes in the game goes in real life. What I mean by that is playing a game is still a real life event that you do with people. You're still socializing with people, right? So can you imagine being in a workplace and two coworkers are talking about something you don't like, and you're part of the conversation, and suddenly you just pull out an X card and you give no explanation, and they have to stop talking about it right there, and you don't explain anything, right? Instead of maybe saying like, guys, you know what, I gotta go, or just being honest, guys, can we not talk about this, or girls, you know, whatever. So this is why the X card to me doesn't make much sense, because to me it kills communication between people, and it kills understanding each other, actually, which other people interpret as, oh, well, you know, you're forcing people to explain their trauma and all that, but you know, that's where I am more old school, where I think that's becoming a bit of an issue to me. Like, you know, if I go see a horror movie, like people at the movie theater still like expect to be uncomfortable and scared. Otherwise, they say that the movie was not very efficient as a horror movie. Why do we treat our role-playing games different? In real life, if I interact with adults and I'm not comfortable with a conversation, I have to either express it or remove myself from the equation. Why do you expect our games to be treated differently? So I think there's a bit of softening in the game that I will go in the old school way for those things. Okay, so this is who I am. So I want to be transparent. I want people to understand that. And also because a lot of people like to mix things, you know, I wanted to state also the things in which I'm very much more new school, but in the game style, more old school. Okay. Now, Thaco the Clown. The thing that I wanted to talk about is, you know, I never hopped on 5th edition 5e, but there's a world in which I would have. If I had never had discovered Castles and Crusades and I was playing Pathfinder 1st edition only, and I was looking for a simpler rule set, and BX is simpler, but again, maybe I wanted something in between. Maybe something with more customization than BX, but not as complicated as Pathfinder 1st edition and all that. 3.5. Then in that world, I would have bought 5th edition. I probably really would have liked it. And 5th edition started as this edition that was going to be for everyone. And I miss that. I don't miss that about it in a way. Like that 5th edition was kind of like old school and new school together, and now it's very much become. It's kind of like trying. It's kind of weird. It's being handled as a story game where the mechanics are not a story game, but I digress. So in that world, I would have gone 5th edition, but I already had Castles and Crusades, and 5th edition ripped off a lot of Castles and Crusades. And then the differences between the two, I prefer the mechanical choices of Castles and Crusades, actually. So with all that considered, I didn't need to buy 5th edition. But in my video, my old video from years ago, where it's called Dear 5th edition, and I wrote 5th, not 5e, because, you know, like 5th edition was still fairly new, I think. So it wasn't like everyone was writing it the same way yet. I did address that I didn't need core books anymore, and adventures, you know, and that I wanted more like stuff that only D&D could do, like Dungeons and Dragons, like Ravenloft, and that I would buy those books, and I did. Okay, it's out of reach, but trust me, I did buy the new Ravenloft. I don't even have the 5e core books, but I bought Ravenloft when it came out, and I was very disappointed, and I realized that 5e is not for me. Not its current iteration, anyway. Oh yeah, and also, I guess I should say, where the new school also doesn't make sense to me is they're getting rid of, like, ability score modifiers for fantasy races, not like human, you know, ethnicities, but fantasy races, elves, dwarves, etc. For human ethnicities, I don't think it would be appropriate, but like they're basically saying that it's racist for it calls back to eugenics, so to some people, to say that an elf has a better dexterity but is less hardy than a human, for example. So for them it's like eugenics, but to me, I don't see that as a valid argument. I don't think you can compare those two things. Elves and humans are supposed to be different species. Like lions and cheetahs are not the same thing, and you're not, when you say that, you're not saying that either feline is superior or inferior to the other. It's kind of, to me, when people say that, they don't realize, but it's almost like they're saying that Superman shouldn't have superpowers because he should not be physically different to humans. He should react to our yellow sun the same way as his red sun, right? As soon as you say, oh, Kryptonians are stronger, faster, and all that, and then, like, is that eugenics to say that Superman gets powers under a yellow sun? I don't think it is. Again, like, I'm taking a very long time to explain my points of view on different things, but, you know, for whatever that's worth. Okay, so now, my opinion on Thaco the Clown. I never got on board 5e because I didn't need more core books to play the game. I already had, like, many core books to play many different ways to play the game already, and 5e was not different enough or interesting enough, or in comparison to those other ones, like, there was no, like, you know, if I were to buy again another version of the rules, I would go maybe with, like, DCC, Dungeon Crawl Classics, because then it offers stuff that's very different from the other ones. 5e is very similar to the ones I already have, mechanically. And then when finally D&D did something that only D&D can do, you know, which is like a setting book of their IPs, intellectual properties, I just don't like the way they handled it. So, okay, all of that to say, Thaco the Clown, this character that mocks. If you don't know who Thaco the Clown is, just look it up online. Thaco, the Clown. And it's this character in a new adventure of 5e that's kind of mocking old school players. Because Thaco is the old mechanic for 2nd edition of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. You know, 2-hit armor class 0. Okay. And so, you know, new school players are like, oh yeah, because like all new school players are kind of like, yeah, because old school players are like bigots and they're gatekeepers and they don't want to let new people in. So this is oh yeah, perfect. Yeah, even some douchebag on Twitter was like, oh, chef's kiss, you know, like, shut up. And then you have like some OSR people got really, really offended, and they're like, oh, you know, and they started coming up with like their response and like what the mascot for the new school players would be. Some of them I found funny, others I found distasteful, so I'm not gonna get too much into that. I do like the approach of Aaron the Pedantic, who suggested like an actual not a mascot to mock the new school players, but just a legit mascot to represent old school players, like a mascot to have of their own. Like just he kind of took that idea, like how about doing something positive with it. I did like that idea very much. So yeah. Okay. So what I have to say now, that's different. All that to say. To me, what bothers me about Thaco the Clown was that Thaco the Clown was... Where did we find Thaco the Clown? We found Thaco the Clown in a 5e product. So, okay, it caters to new school players. Who cares, right? Well, the reason why I feel bad about it's not for me. I don't play 5e. So, Thaco the Clown doesn't bother me. But you know how sometimes you can be bothered by something because you get defensive for other people. You feel bad for other people. And what I've read and what it kind of like broke my heart a little bit, to be honest. There's a lot of old school players out there who transitioned to 5e. Me, I could have been one of those. I could have. I mean, I don't know if I'm a old school player, but I kind of became like a player of old school rules, and I'm almost 40. But I started with 3.5. Is that old school these days? I don't know. You tell me. At 3rd edition, and then 3.5 I started. But these players who have been with Dungeons and Dragons for a long time, they follow the IP, they follow the brand religiously. They didn't leave for another IP that was replicating the rules they had back in the day. They stuck to actual Dungeons and Dragons. The IP meant something for them, to them. And we see a lot of that lately with IPs, like how they treat their old school fans, if I may. Again, don't want to get too much into it, but it's kind of sad in a way that they embrace the new fans so much that they will, and they should, like any hobby should embrace new fans, should be progressive, should go forward. But you can't be mocking the old fans. So if you look at a show, for example, like Cobra Kai, that's perfect. You have a lot of diversity in the cast, like the new characters and all that, but the old characters also treated with respect. The old fans don't feel mocked by the show at all. Like, actually, they feel like they call back a lot to the history of what made it great. So Cobra Kai and Karate Kid. So Cobra Kai is a perfect example how you can be very progressive and respect the old fans. And then you don't see old fans complaining about Cobra Kai at all. So you have these old fans who have followed Dungeons and Dragons for some of them from like even before Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition and all that. And when they see Thaco the Clown, they feel sad or offended or angry or betrayed even, because they've been playing 5e, they've been on board, they've been part of the community, and suddenly they feel like because so yeah. And now a lot of people are trying to say, well, Thaco the Clown doesn't represent a lot of new school players are trying to justify it, saying, well, they shouldn't feel affected, though if they feel affected it's because they're the bad guy. Some of them even go like, if you're offended by Thaco the Clown, you're the bad guy. Or if you're not a gatekeeper, then you have no reason to be offended by Thaco the Clown. And they justify it and they explain why and all that. But I think it's kind of interesting how those new school players are missing a very important point that I actually agree with on Twitter, that they often like mention these things. Twitter's a weird place, but I do think it's a good, and not only Twitter, this is a good argument in life. It's not just what you meant. It's not just what you had in mind. It's also how the other person felt. This is by the way, in society, this is good advice. If you messed up, you should acknowledge it. So all these people justifying how Thaco the Clown is not attacking old players who started a long time ago who are still playing today in 5e. No, they're attacking the specific. Look, if these older players were on board for 5e, 100% with every change, everything that's going on, they're on board, and they felt attacked, you should respect that. It's not, you see how the double standard is there? And I agree with the advice of it's important how the other person reacts. It's not just what you had in mind, it's how it came out, how you made the person feel. You should, in life, you should actually, I agree with the fact that you should pay attention to how others felt about what you said. And maybe you need to analyze how you said it or your opinion. And I'm not saying you should always change your opinion on how you say things because of how the others react, but it's very important to be mindful of that. And so, I maybe I should have started with this because I feel like, like whoever this was for might not have gotten this long into the video, but okay, whatever. If any of you want to share this idea, you can always put a timestamp, if you will, on the video. This is where he actually talks about Thaco the Clown, his point that he wants to make. And that's my whole problem with the attitude right now, is that all of these older players who are new school in their way of playing, and who follow Dungeons and Dragons and suddenly feel betrayed, they're not being listened to. It's not about the OSR. The OSR, we're doing our own thing, okay? Like, don't worry about us. Anyone in the OSR offended by Thaco the Clown, you're not even buying 5e. Who cares? Anyone in 5e who thinks like, oh, we sure got them with this, like, you know what? You didn't hurt anyone. Anyone in the OSR who you hurt, okay, congrats, I guess. But you know what you did as well? You hurt your own. That's what's sad about it, and I don't feel bad for myself. It actually makes me sad to see these older players feeling so betrayed, because it's their own tribe, it's their own environment for playing. It's that was their place to play. Their 5e was their happy place, was their hobby, and their hobby turned on them. And for you to say, oh, but it wasn't meant at you, we didn't mean because you were playing since those days, it's this attitude specifically. It's not for you to say. If people were offended, you should take notice. I don't mean to say that you need to agree, but it's kind of, there's a double standard there, where like if people normally, like new school players and younger people, and make a big deal of it, you should listen to how the other felt, and you know what they have to say. And those older players who are in 5e, no one is listening to them right now. They're feeling betrayed, they're feeling hurt, they feel like they're being pointed at and laughed at, and some of them are calling them bigoted, you know, for why? Because they play a long time, because those new players saw other people who are in the OSR, in the old school gaming space, who said stuff that even I would disagree with, or whatever, and then they were like, oh, old school players are that, you know. And now, like, you're going to ignore them, right? But they're part of your own. They're part of your group, and you're ignoring them. And it is something that you call ageism. Yay, another ism. So yeah, that's what I had to say about Thaco the Clown. That, who the fuck cares how we in the OSR feel about it? Because, you know, like, we don't buy 5e, so whatever. I did buy Ravenloft, and I regretted it. So, you know, 5e is not for me. But really, you have hurt your own. Bravo, idiots.